you've one example of where that might actually be happening at the moment, and it's drones. It's attack drones. So it's been an ongoing debate in the military community for the last 8 to 10 years. How much decision-making power do you give military drones? Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler, in association with Square. Square helps you look after your business needs, from payments to menu management and online ordering. Visit square.com for more. Now, is artificial intelligence out of control? Is it a risk to civilization? That's what Elon Musk and a number of other tech leaders are saying in a new letter on the issue. They're arguing for a pause on AI development for 6 months. Are they right? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. Tabitha Monahan, do our eyes roll when it's Elon Musk who is behind a letter like this?
My eyes definitely rolled a little bit because Elon Musk was associated with this, although he isn't the only person on this. I think there are some significant figures that are on this list. Also, people who are involved in the development of this technology are involved in this. We have some people who are anonymously writing how they feel about it, but they don't want to be associated with it because they've been told they can't speak to the media about it. So I think, yes, if it was Elon Musk on his own, I would say, yeah, I think we would go, oh, right, okay, well, maybe it's because you have your own business reasons for wanting to slow down the development of this technology, but this isn't what we're seeing here. Yeah, I mean, the co-signatories here include top AI professors, Stuart Russell, others, co-founders of Apple, Steve Wozniak, Pinterest and Skype. This is a kind of a broad range of concern around this issue. Although with Musk, he was the guy who co-founded OpenAI, which is the organization backed by Microsoft now, which has updated GPT-4 and with ChatGPT. What the letter is doing is it's urging the creation of shared safety protocols, it says, which are audited by independent experts to, quote, ensure that systems adhering to them are safe beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you ever lie awake at night worrying about what AI might do or what harm it might cause? I wouldn't say that I would lie awake at night, but when we do talk about it, and we have spoken about it on the podcast, you do worry. And I think at this time with GPT-4 and all the other developments that we've seen, the conversation naturally went to education, students using it for essays, etc. But I think it does go beyond this. And what they're saying in this letter is that it poses an existential threat to society and even humanity, and that they're not trying to mitigate those risks. To me, when I read this, I thought, is this the technology sector and the science community being more responsible with their approach to this? Because I think we could argue that we saw this with social media. I mean, it is a little bit of a departure away from what Mark Zuckerberg said was move fast and break things. Just progress for the sake of progression, and let's not think about the consequences. And we've seen the consequences in social media, so maybe we're seeing that change a little bit now. Whether or not 6 months is enough, I think is a whole different question. Okay, they pause it for 6 months. These people, that's what their jobs are. Are they going to want to A, pause it? B, is that long enough? And if they do pause it for that long, are governments, authorities, watchdogs, are they going to be able to keep up with the progress here and regulate them? I don't know. What do you think? I think the answer to all of those questions is almost certainly no. There's way too much money. There's way too much development. There are way too much government-backed initiatives in this country, in the UK, across Europe, backing artificial intelligence. But just to go back to the letter, I mean, the terms being used here are out of control development, unelected tech leaders, the development of non-human minds that might eventually outnumber, outsmart, obsolete and replace us. But they're saying even now that they are, some of these people on this letter, that they are competing with human intelligence. It's not necessary. Right now, we're not talking about them necessarily outstripping. We've spoken about the misinformation that GPT-4 can produce. So it isn't quite there yet in terms of going beyond human competence. Yeah, I think the challenge for a lot of us in thinking about this issue is
about exactly that, how it competes with human intelligence. Because most of us, when we think about day-to-day applications of AI, we think about what are still fairly manual processes, even if they're administrative ones. Like, for example, as a journalist, when I do an interview with somebody, instead of listening back to the tape or the file and then transcribing it, I now use one of a number of transcription tools. That's a form of artificial intelligence that just saves me time.
We do the same when we're producing the podcasts.
Right, absolutely. There are, lots of other ways that AI is used to do that on a small scale, and it's difficult to get our heads around how that might be deployed in an intelligent way. Now, the EU does have some ideas about what it doesn't want AI to do, because it's currently trying to regulate around that and introduce law around that. And mainly what that's around is things like facial recognition or manipulation of information or deepfakes, or even things like social scoring, which they do in China. Now, they start to stray into the area of where humans right now would rank and assess something and then apply judgment to that. And you could easily see how an AI system or a machine would be able to step in and do that. But beyond that, we're still very much into thinking of what might happen in the deep future here. Because really, let's call a spade here. What we're actually all thinking in the back of our minds is, does AI get into the mind of a robot and do they rise up and kill us? Okay, that's the subtext behind most of the newspaper and media stories you see and you read. So the question is, how far is that off? Now, I'll just give one example of where that might actually be happening at the moment, and it's drones. It's attack drones. So it's been an ongoing debate in the military community for the last 8 to 10 years. How much decision-making power do you give military drones? We see them in Ukraine at the moment. The Russians use them, the Ukrainians use them. The Israelis use them, but there is a split in the community as to whether or not, for example, drones should have the ability to assess a target and fire without human control. Maybe they're out of contact with the human base. That's an ongoing debate.
But also, what we're saying, we're giving examples of how it's going to be used or how it's currently being used. So we have these people who have penned this open letter. From what you're saying, do you think the horse is already bolted here?
Oh, yeah. I think it has. The big news story of 2023, other than the layoffs in the tech sector, has been artificial intelligence, mainly driven by ChatGPT. Now Google is desperately trying to keep up with Bard.
And Microsoft.
Yeah, and there are a number of competing systems that are now out there. And that's not turning back. And one of the reasons it's not turning back is because of applications in private sector and in industry. I interviewed a company this week called Cubic Telecom, an Irish company. Now, what they basically do is they put SIM cards or the equivalent of SIM cards in cars so that those cars can connect to app stores and deliver services and all that kind of stuff. Big deals with Volkswagen and other car companies. But one of the areas they're in are autonomous tractors. Tractors that drive themselves around farms, or that can be controlled by phones. Now, if you have a giant 20,000 acre farm in Australia or the US or Brazil, it just might make a lot more sense in terms of picking fruit or seeding or controlling a tractor for that to be done autonomously. If it's done autonomously, you're going to need some amount of artificial intelligence involved. We've talked so much about self-driving cars and autonomous cars. You can't do that without AI. If a car encounters a situation and it's supposed to be self-driving and a child runs out and then a dog runs out, the car has to know which one to hit.
Yeah.
To be very blunt about it.
Yeah.
It has to know which one to avoid. Yeah. You can only do that with AI,
I do wonder, using your example with farming, I wonder when, let's say, the Industrial Revolution was happening, were they having these kinds of conversations? Were they thinking about, okay, oh my God, this is changing everything? We're far more worried about it now because the rapid pace and development. OpenAI is the one that's leading it. They announced their first language model in February 2019. Then June 2020 was GPT-3. Then they introduced the enhanced one, GPT-3, in November 2022. And then GPT-4 in March, earlier, like a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's so quick. And it's actually, that's just one company doing that and just pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. Just going back to the letter, what do you make of the letter? Do you think their concerns are legitimate? Do you think it's going to work? Are Microsoft, Google, OpenAI going to listen to them? And also, they're calling this letter is saying, look, if there isn't a halt, that governments need to get involved. What do you make of all of this?
Well, the letter is calling for a pause for at least 6 months on any AI technology that is more advanced or more powerful than GPT-4. So that's the one that was just launched a few weeks back. Now, that is pretty powerful already. That's not going to happen, number one. Okay. Number two, should governments get involved then to announce a moratorium? They probably won't. They almost certainly won't. Should they? Even if you could make a case that the development of AI is imminently dangerous, which, to be fair, the signatories of this letter have not done. Like, as a journalist, when something comes in, whether it's a press release or I'm interviewing someone, I always like people to give me examples. Spell it out for me. Show me why and how this is dangerous. Not it could be sometime in the future. How it's dangerous right now. I mean, I've given you example of attack drones, for example. Show me and tell me why this could be a danger. And they haven't done that. It's very difficult then, particularly because the lobby organizations of the companies who are developing this technology are incredibly powerful. The EU, to a lesser extent the US, to an even lesser extent the UK, are currently trying to pass laws to regulate AI, but it's only in specific instances, the ones I gave you around things like facial recognition and manipulation and social scoring. The Chinese will use this to try and just control the population, probably. Who knows what the Russians will do. In aggregate, are they right to sound a warning about this? Yes, they are. Will anything be done about it? No, is my view. And by the way, that's partially because of Elon Musk. It's because whatever Elon Musk puts his name now to, it sinks it in terms of credibility. That's not an animus I have against Musk. It's just recognizing a fact. If you poll legislators and policymakers about Elon Musk, they always raise their eyebrows. Now, I know because I talk to them and I mention his name to them. So
it's incredibly unfortunate, though, I think, as well, because for somebody like me who is looking at this, and when we talk about AI and we talk about GPT-4, you do get a tiny bit worried. You know, you do, because you do wonder, how far is this going to go? How much is this going to change my life from a very selfish point of view?
Do you not see the benefits of that? Like you're framing that in a negative way. Is there any positive side to that?
No, absolutely. And I've seen people using it, you know, and and it's not even writing full essays. It's just give me a start, you know, just give me a hand or give me a steer on certain assignments or whatever it is. Not work, but like outside. I do see the benefits of it, but I can also see the negatives of it.
What, in your position, do you think the negatives might be? Like, what's the worst case scenario that could emerge from the current drift of what we're seeing with AI at the moment? Like, is it that your entire job would be replaced? Is that a fear?
Well, I think so, and I think those conversations are being had in the media now. I mean, last week we were looking at GPT-4, and I was able to type into it, produce an episode of the Big Tech Show that speaks about TikTok and the current conversations that are being had in the US. It was very standard, to be honest with you, and I think that's something that I have said before, is that I don't quite think GPT-4 or the AI is able to bring the personality into the likes of, let's say, a podcast. You need that human element to it still. But like we're saying, and with what this letter is saying, is the rapid development.
Okay, but just to take that example, so we're talking now in a podcast. This is the podcast, what we're doing. The production and the preparation and the admin around it, like an article, like many other processes that our listeners and viewers do, they support. But this is the main thing, the podcast. Don't you think that will remain constant no matter how advanced AI gets? That notwithstanding maybe bits of preparation or maybe a promo article or something like that, or that the core thing that keeps us employed would stay the same?
I think my issue with it is that I actually don't know, and I can't answer that question because I can't conceptualize what that could possibly be.
Well,
because when I think, like, I went into college in 2013. When I was a first year art student in UCD, there wasn't a chance that I could have thought that I would be able to stick my essay, and I know we keep bringing it back to education because I think that's a very straightforward example of how you can apply this technology. I would never have thought at 18, 19 that that could be possible. Like, it's not that long. It's 10 years later and that's possible.
Can I just follow that thread, just to play devil's advocate? So what if they use ChatGPT for essays? What's the problem with that?
Well, because then what have they learnt? That, like, part of writing an essay is being able to create an argument and argue it. That's the point of an essay, and that's a skill.
Is
and
it not,
like, I'm
is
using
it
it
not a
now.
reality that in the school system that we have, that most essays are just formulaic stuff by rote based on points and structure that they've been instructed by their teacher to formulate to get marks in an
Secondary
exam?
school, possibly, yeah, I would argue, but not at college level, no. And but my personal experience is no.
But do you not think that a college lecturer or professor worth their salt, and I emphasise the last bit, worth their salt, would be able to detect whether something was created by ChatGPT?
But that's my point, is that maybe right now, but the point is that the technology is going so quickly that humans can't keep up with it. So it gets to the point, like, we don't know where we're going to be in 5 years' time with this.
But my question, and sorry for drilling down on this, but I'm trying to figure out the basis and the rationale for our fear, because I feel it too, but I'm just exploring it off the top of my head here. In that example with the college essay, what is the worst case scenario for ChatGPT taking over essays? I mean, is it that the college lecturer can't detect it, and so therefore the role of that college and that lecturer in marking essays is no longer valid? Is that the problem? Because if that's the problem, then maybe just the economic model with that part of the college experience just should be adapted.
I think that's part of the problem, but I think, again, it's going back to what's the point of the essay. Like, it's not just to give the lecturer something to do, to check an essay. It's an exercise for the student to learn how to think about something, create an argument, and then
so
back
what
it
you're
up
really
after.
raising, the idea that you're really raising here, is that it may be possible, if nothing changed, for a student to just coast through college and bluff their way using ChatGPT the whole way and get their 2.2 or their 2.1 degree.
Yeah.
See, I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. I think it could maybe happen initially in very limited circumstances, but I don't think the system would sustain that happening, because it would be, there's no more navel-gazing sector than the academic one, even worse than the media one. Okay, and that's saying something. My wife works in third level sector, and I can tell you they analyse and hyper-analyse everything to the nth degree. And I think they would just adapt their systems, or we wouldn't send our kids to that college.
Yeah, but again, that's the point, is that they examine things to the nth degree with the technology that they are able to use. But the point is that if GPT-4...
the technology is their brain. We're talking about an essay here, so we're talking about originality, and it's a combination of both, oral assessment and, written assessment. So if you hand an essay up to me and I'm looking at it and it reads a little bit too American or it's a little bit too perfect, I'm going to have a sense over whether I think that you wrote that.
Yeah, but I think my thing is that if GPT-4 or whatever comes after that outstrips the regulations that are in place that colleges have in order to determine whether somebody has or has not written that essay, if it gets too far in advance and the colleges can't keep up,
but
is that not the issue?
No, but isn't that our job to keep it? I mean, I see exactly what you're saying, that if the technology moves too quickly, we simply won't be able to compete.
Which is what this open letter is also arguing.
I would counter, maybe naively, maybe Pollyannish, maybe too optimistically, that is our job and our obligation and our prerogative to to keep adapting and the institutions we have to stay ahead of that. That's our job. Yes, it'll be challenging, but like life is challenging. We have to be ambitious. I mean, if the whole point of, higher learning and our evolution in civilization is about us becoming more evolved and more aware. And if we're challenged by ChatGPT or AI systems, then that is another one of those tests, another one of those challenges. And I think we'll come out on top. I'm not actually nearly as freaked out as the people on this letter, because I think we'll pretty much always stay ahead of the technology. And if we don't, we'll just pull the plug out.
Will we though?
I think we will.
I don't know if
well,
that's true.
I can give you
don't think that's true.
No, I can give you specific examples of technologies that were threatening to advance too quickly, and we either pulled the plug or we froze. The biggest one is nuclear.
Okay.
So in the 1950s and the 1960s, we had made so many breakthroughs in nuclear technology that it was conceivable that not only weaponry, but like power systems and a range of other applications would use nuclear technology, and we're all entering a nuclear age. We all decided that the threat of annihilation and bombs that were more powerful than we could conceive was too great. So we all pretty much, put the brake on nuclear development. In Ireland, nuclear is a dirty word. We can actually do it. We have done it. So if AI were to get to a point where it was not only replacing you and I, not only replacing Joe Duffy on Liveline, but also was starting to, dictate what jobs we had, who got certain benefits, who had to stay locked up for longer, I think we'd just pull the plug. I really do.
I get that, and I'm not saying let's not do it because it's scary. I think just personally, just drilling into it, it's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of what could happen. And I know you're saying, no, it won't happen and they'll pull the plug. We have to put that trust in the authorities.
Yeah. I don't think that's ever really a reason not to look at something or to analyse that. Like with nuclear, we got a very clear idea of what could happen, and in some cases what was happening, because Hiroshima and the atomic bomb there was, in my view, one of the low points of civilization. With the damage it caused. We don't know what AI could do, but I mean, they've been saying the same about robots for 10 years. I mean, I've spent 10 years writing articles analysing whether robots were going to take our jobs. They did in some cases. I mean, like in factories, for example, in automotive factories, lots of industrial processes. But it has not caused the kind of social meltdown that we thought it might cause.
Yeah, I think for me, when I read this letter, I thought at least people are thinking about it. Really, for me, it was more a relief that I thought, well, at least those involved in it and those who are watching it and are experts in it are thinking, okay, maybe we're going a little bit too quickly. I just thought that's nice that there is people willing to be responsible about the development of the technology, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah. I endorse all of those sentiments. I just think the fact that it's Elon Musk is a little bit nuts, especially when you're talking about a guy who has a company, Neuralink, whose mission is to plug into your brain and help control you via computer. Anyway, it's a fascinating debate. We could go on for a lot longer. Tabitha Monahan, who also produced this show, thank you very much for joining us today. To Conan Doherty on video and Gav Hennessy on sound. You've been listening or watching the Big Tech Show in association with Square. From me, Adrian Weckler. I'll talk to you the same time next week. Bye-bye.